Right, hello and welcome everyone to this presentation on past tenses. The reason I've chosen this presentation, this topic for you today is thanks to two questions, very good questions that Sajjad has sent us. Sajjad's first question: what's the difference between I was driving when you called and I had been driving when you called? And Sajjad's second question: I never hear native speakers use had done, past perfect. Do they actually ever use this tense? Very good question, Sajjad. And you're not the only one who has asked me this. I've had both questions several times. So let's hope I can clarify that for you. In order to get to the answers, we need to review the four past tenses: did, was doing, had done, had been doing. So for those of you who like their names, past simple, did, past continuous, was doing, past perfect, had done, and past perfect continuous, had been doing. So usually when I clarify or teach tenses, I use timelines. I think they help a lot in getting the concept. So I've created a kind of an imaginary timeline for someone called Alex. This is Alex's timeline. And in this timeline, we have four past time frames: 1990, 2008, and 2009. So talking about just one single action in each of these years, we just use the past simple. I think that's very clear for all of you. One action in a very specific time frame in the past, past simple. So let's see what they were. 1990, Alex was born in Belgium in 1990. 2008, end of secondary school. Great. He, Alex, finished his secondary school in 2008. Then in 2009, two things happened. He had some driving lessons, okay, one action, and he moved to Italy in 2009. So two actions. But as you can see, we have one action in a specific time in the past, past simple. We don't need any other tense than that. So when do we need the others? Let's look at the next slide and focus on 2009. Now, two things happened in 2009, kind of simultaneously. One was he was learning to drive, and the other one, he moved to Belgium. I think past continuous is also pretty clear to most of you. The action, now we have two things. The action that was longer, that was in the background, goes into the past continuous tense. He was learning to drive. And the shorter action that interrupted the longer one is in the past simple. He was learning to drive when he moved to Belgium. Now, so the lessons were interrupted. There's this idea of interruption. One thing is going on, the other one comes in the middle of it. So there's this idea of interruption coming in the middle, but it never tells us whether the interrupted action continued or not. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. It's not the point. It's just these two things coming together like that, okay? So I think that's still quite simple, past continuous. Let's move on to past perfect. When do we use this? Same context. We have he moved to Belgium, the past simple action. Now, certain things had been completed, like he had 10 lessons, 10 completed lessons. This is when you need to use the past perfect, past. Alex had 10 driving lessons before he moved to Belgium. It is because those actions did not continue anymore. They had all been completed before the move to Belgium. I think so far so good. Usually the concept is clear. So the last one, let's look at it, is past perfect continuous. the had been doing tense. When do we use this? We now use this when we mention the length of time that that action had been going on. So remember, he was learning to drive. That's the past one. He was learning to drive when he moved. Now, if we mention the length of time he had been learning to drive, we switch the past continuous to the past perfect continuous. He had been learning to drive for 6 months before or when. You can use either conjunction, when or before he moved to Belgium, right? So just take that in. We've got something happened and interrupted something else, past continuous. Things had been completed before something happened, and things had been in progress for some time before something happened. So you can see that this before he moved to Belgium is your reference point in the past. To make it a bit clearer, even from a concept point of view, I'm going to compare these three tenses, past continuous, past perfect, and past perfect continuous, with their present equivalent. Okay, so if I take you to the next slide, remember, past continuous was when he moved, that's your reference point. When he moved to Belgium, he was learning to drive. Something was in progress. Compared to present continuous. Now, Alex is learning to sing. Now, the word now I have put in brackets because we don't need to keep saying now. When we use the present continuous, now is implicitly your reference point. Whereas when we use the past continuous, we have to mention the past reference point, that it can be anything, right? So I think that's hopefully making it clear for you why we need a reference point in the past, whereas we don't need one in the present. So past continuous, let's now compare past perfect to present perfect. Before he moved to Belgium, so that's our reference point in the past, he had had 10 driving lessons. It compares very easily, it's the equivalent of present perfect. Until now, now is our reference point, he has had 10 singing lessons. So the tenses are always parallel. And to finish, past perfect continuous, remember, so before he moved to Belgium, our reference point in the past, he had been learning to drive for 6 months, the equivalent or compared to. Until now, now is our reference point. Alex has been learning to sing for 6 months. Okay, so I hope that clarifies a little bit. Well, to a great extent, actually, I hope it clarifies the concept of these tenses for you. So let's go back to the questions Sajrad has asked. First question, so what is the difference between I was driving when you called and I had been driving when you called? To be grammatically correct, the second sentence should not stand on alone like that. I had been driving when you called. There should be a length of time. Otherwise, your Sajrad is right. Why use I had been driving? There's no reason. Just I was driving when you called. But you may hear, in some cases, a native speaker omit the time, the length of time, and just say something like that. I've been driving when you called. If you hear this, the idea of for some time, for a while, is implicit in what the person has said. What they really wanted to say, but didn't say all of it, is I had been driving for a while, I had been driving for some time when you called, right? So that's the answer to the first question. Again, native speakers do this when they naturally know that they don't, that's implicit in their message. Can we do that? If you know it's implicit, yes, but my recommendation is not to do that. Just follow, when you use the language yourself, you can be more confident and always clearer if you follow the rules, but don't expect all natives to do the same. Which brings us to the next question, which is very much about how natives use the language. without using the grammar. And it's the second question. I'd remind you what Sajjad asked. I never hear native speakers use had done, the past perfect tense. Do they actually ever use this tense? My answer to this question is yes and no, depending on how language aware they are. You need to remember that for many years now, native English speakers do not learn English grammar at school. It is not taught. They don't learn grammar, syntax. They don't learn the language. They usually just do literature and essays and things like that. So they're never taught grammar, tenses. They have no awareness from their schooling. Later in life, they may decide to do it themselves, to learn themselves, if they become a writer, for example. And that's why writing standards of native speakers have dropped. And for example, one of the reasons behind software like Grammarly is to help native speakers improve their writing, because it's got really bad. So what the conclusion from this fact is that you cannot expect all native speakers to use grammatical structures correctly. They say and write what they hear, right? What they have grown up hearing other native speakers. So what's the relevance of this piece of information to Sajjad's question? I'll try to explain. Consider what a contracted past perfect tense sounds like when spoken naturally by a native speaker. Let me read the sentences I've got here. He'd had some driving lessons before he moved. After she'd finished her homework, she called her friend. As you can hear in connected speech, where we always contract the auxiliary, the difference between he'd had and he had, and she'd finished and she finished, is minimal. Really, you cannot hear it because it's not said. It's not supposed to be said. In spoken English, it's supposed to be contracted. So I say the two again. He'd had, he had. She'd finished, she finished. It's completely imperceptible. So someone who's learned the language mainly through listening may use past simple instead of past perfect. It's just because they have only heard past simple. They didn't hear the little d before. So even when the phonetics are different, now they naturally use two past simple tenses. So you will hear, he left after he ate. Whereas the correct form, obviously, following what I've just described, is he left after he'd eaten, right? So that's where it comes from. Many of you have said, Sajjad brought it to, was the last person to ask this question, I can't hear the past perfect. They don't use it. No. Those who know about it, use it. Those who haven't learned it, of course, don't use it. It brings us to the question, so should we, as non-native speakers, just forget about the past perfect? Let's do what most native speakers do. Well, it's up to you, because I have a feeling that as the language evolves towards simplification, maybe the past simple tense will eventually replace both the present perfect, I've done, so like I've finished, and past perfect, I'd finished. Because really phonetically, I've finished, I'd finished, I finished are so similar. That's why you see these perfect tenses gradually disappearing. But for the moment, it's not the case for every native speaker. So these perfect tenses are still used by many. And of course, you will see them, hear them in informal situations. So you need to know about them, understand them, so that you don't get confused. But for your own usage, obviously, as an English teacher, I would say try to use them correctly. But if you're getting confused, oh, what is that? Too many rules, just don't stress about them. Really don't. If in doubt, just use the past simple. Your message is clear. Right, I think that's the end of the presentation for me. I hope it's helped you get a better grasp of the past, the four past tenses. and also help you to feel a bit more relaxed about using everything so perfectly. Just gradually, through the awareness of these tenses, they will come to you. You will activate them. Or maybe they will just disappear from the language, in which case we will all have a huge celebration. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. For more on this topic, click here. Remember to also check out my complete online course, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching and happy studies!